What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm SALT Lake Highlander here, coming right at you with a much needed video that should have been uploaded like 3 weeks ago, but it wasn't. And now we're here doing the draft analysis video for the SALT Lake Sceptiles for the Pokemon Little League Draft League. One thing a lot of coaches like to do before the draft league actually starts is to go over what they drafted over the course of the drafting period of the league and let people know what Pokemon you have on your team. So I failed to do that initially, so we're going to be doing it now so you guys can see which Pokemon is part of this team that we drafted. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and jump straight into this. This is going to be super sloppy, so I don't even care. Up first, we got Mienfoo. This man is supposedly one of the biggest threats in all of Little Cup for the reason that it's really fast and it hits really hard. And those are the two main components that make a Pokemon good in Little Cup. Fun fact, in case you guys didn't know, I was actually up first to draft and I didn't know what to pick. And so I was Googling around everywhere and everyone was like, yo, Mienfoo's like the best, absolute best for Little Cup. So I was like, you know what the heck, I'll snag this one. And it turned out to be a great pick because a lot of people in our league got very salty that I picked this Pokemon very first. But it was to be expected, I think, because it was one of the best ones. So I don't know, I think it was a great pick. Mienfoo hasn't really put in a ton of work yet on our team, but I feel like I've been using him wrong, and I feel like upcoming in the next few battles, I have other plans for this mon, so I'm very excited for that. Up next, we got one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, actually, Lileep, and the Lileep was actually a Pokemon that I wanted to snag from the very beginning because I saw its name in a forum when I was looking through Little Cup stuff to try to pick out what team I kind of wanted to have preemptively, and once I saw Lileep, I was like, yes, I need to get this mon immediately. And Lileep is really good because this man gets Storm Drain. And Storm Drain is fantastic because there's a lot of water type threats in Little Cup, and that just nullifies them completely. Not only that, it removes one of its weaknesses, I think. Unless Grass resists it, but whatever. We can talk about that later. However, it is a huge defensive and especially defensive tank. Has a pretty high HP stats, and with Eviolite, it's very hard to kill. So it's a good rock setter. It likes to sit there and stall out games with Giga Drain as well as recover, and can sometimes get some ancient power boosts. And that's kind of what I was looking to do with this thing, was just really have a, I guess is a pivot the right word? I don't know. Vivid, if you're watching this video, correct me in the comment section down below. But either way, it's going to be a very, very good mon to have defensively, and I was very excited to pick it up. Next up, we got Honedge. Honedge was kind of a on the spot pick. Because really, what I was looking for was a counter to a lot of fairy types, with Mienfoo being my first pick. And I was like, what should I pick to kind of combat the fairy menace that is Little Cup? And Honedge came to mind, and I was like, you know what, that is not a bad idea. So I decided to snag him up. Honedge actually has a fantastic defense stat, as you can see right there, as well as a pretty high attack stat, so he can hit pretty hard. Not only that, he gets some good priority with Shadow Sneak, and Ghost typing is actually really good, because then pesky mons can't go over and be like, I'm just going to click Explode, as we saw in week 1. But Honedge was really drafted in order to deal with fairy types, and I managed to get Steelium Z as my C-Stone. And in case you guys don't know, we each got to draft a Z-Stone, and I ended up with Steelium Z. And I thought that was a good pick because of the team that I had at the time, and so I managed to get my hands on that Z-Stone, and Honedge is a really good use for that because he gets Iron Head, and Iron Head is really good. Plus, he can flinch and all that good stuff. But Honedge, I'm looking forward to see how much work he can put in the future weeks. He did really well week 1 with that powerful switch in. That's really all I used him for. Week 2, I managed to take out a Flabebe with it with Corkscrew Crash. So hopefully we'll see more action from Honedge in the future. Next up, we have Spritzy. Now, Spritzy was a second pick, or a secondary choice, I should say, in the draft. When I was going through the draft, I was like, yo, I need a fairy type too. I was just trying to spread out all my type advantages that I had, because I was like, I need to make sure that I can counter a bunch of different stuff. And Spritzy came to mind, or not Spritzy, Snubble came to mind, and I really wanted to snag up Snubble. However, I think Psy Statics ended up drafting that Pokemon before I got the chance, so I ended up going with Spritzy. Spritzy was a really strong tier 1 mon that hadn't been drafted yet, and so I went up and picked it up. And looking through a bunch of guides and stuff with Spritzy, Spritzy is actually a really good tank in Little Cup. Not only that, it can set up Wish, it can set up Aromatherapy, and it can set up Calm Mind, which is really nice, and you can hit things pretty hard with Moonblast if you get a couple of Calm Minds up. But Spritzy is a really good healing mon on my team, and I think if I ever went up against a team that was like wanting to set up so many status ailments that it was like ridiculous, I think Spritzy is a good pick for that. Other than that, I really don't know what I'm talking about, in case you haven't noticed throughout this entire video, but I think that was a good pick, and hopefully we'll see some more use of Spritzy in the future, because I don't think we've actually sent him into battle yet. Next up was another pick that was me kind of trying to balance out my elemental types that I had. I ended up snagging Growlithe. Now, Growlithe, I thought, had a little bit of potential. I thought his base stats were a little bit higher than it actually is when I initially picked him, but that's okay. I feel like Growlithe can have a lot of potential because it gets a lot of different moves. Like, its moveset is actually very wide, and like there's lots of variety to pick there. Like dragon moves and close combat and like all these other moves that I didn't expect Growlithe to get, that I feel like he can go ahead and surprise some people with. But I think the biggest thing with Growlithe is that it's an Intimidate user. And Intimidate is really good because it lowers people's attack when you switch in, and switching is such a huge thing in singles format, so I felt that was good. Also, he gets Flash Fire, so in case we end up going up against a bunch of pesky fire types, I could potentially bring him to just try to set up so its own fire type moves will be a lot stronger, and we could see what goes from there. Also, he can learn Will-O-Wisp, good burn user. And other than that, I was hoping he could learn Extreme Speed. I don't think he learns it. I think only Arcanine learns it, but I'll have to go check that at some point. But Growlithe, I feel like, was a subpar pick. I haven't seen much use or availability for him to be used yet, but I'm hoping that I can find a spot for him soon. Next up, we have Rufflet, the little bird nugget itself. Rufflet was actually a pretty good pick, a solid pick, I think, for our team. We needed a defog user to kind of, or a rapid spinner, you know, to get rid of not arena traps, but for entry hazards, because entry hazards are also a huge deal in single format battles, because switching is so important. So when you switch out and you get hit by like rocks constantly, it adds up over time. So I figured, hey, I need a defog user, but Rufflet was kind of a bonus because not only is he a defog user, he can also hit stupidly hard. He also gets the ability Hustle, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you can hit super hard with all your moves, but on the other hand, everything is pretty prone to miss. So you kind of have to balance out what you're wanting to use here for, or use your Rufflet for. However, we managed to use Rufflet in both Week 1 and Week 2. Week 2 was very, very unsuccessful use of Rufflet, I feel like. And Week 1 was kind of me just testing the waters, so we still didn't do very well with that regard. However, with a Choice Scarf and maybe some other items and stuff like that, I feel like Rufflet can be a serious threat in Little Cup. With Brave Bird or Superpower, U-Turn, Return, like a bunch of stab moves. And not only that, U-Turn is really good as well. So hopefully we'll make smarter plays with Rufflet in the future. With that attack stat, you can't let this thing go to waste. Next up is a mon that's done surprisingly well for what I expected it to do. One thing was I wanted another Stealth Rock setter because I felt like Stealth Rock is really important in Little Cup, and we already had Lileep, but I was like, Lileep, in case Lileep gets knocked out for whatever reason, I want to have a second Stealth Rock setter. Maybe that was a little bit greedy on my part, but however, we managed to snag up Piplup. And Piplup is actually really good because not only can it set rocks, it can get rid of rocks at the same time. So it gets both Stealth Rock and Defog, which is fantastic. But Piplup actually put in a crap ton of work, as you saw Week 1, and managed to KO 4 Mons, which is insane, with Scald. And Scald was really good. And you can also see that, or you can't see it down below, but it actually gets some really awesome movesets with Ice Beam and some other good stuff. I was hoping it would get Aqua Jet as I was looking last week, but it doesn't, unfortunately. But Piplup, again, mainly was there to get rid of rocks and set up rocks, and then potentially burn things with Scald. And that was what I kind of wanted it for. But now that I see that Piplup can be a lot more of a menace, because water types are surprisingly good against a lot of the teams in our draft league, I can try and put Piplup to use in some other ways that we can maybe test out in the future. But I'm very happy with this pick, and I'm actually really excited that we got our hands on. Next up is a mon that I have very little idea of how to use in Little Cup. It is Grimer. Grimer was initially just a random pick, because one thing you guys have to know, when we were doing draft, I kept picking Pokemon that other people had already picked, because there was a lot of confusion going around with like how the draft was going to work. Or like when like people were drafting and people would draft something, and then I myself couldn't be on the Discord all the time, so I didn't see someone drafted it. And then the document we had, like, it wasn't like updated real time. It would take a little time to update, and so I kept accidentally drafting other people's Pokemon, and they were like, "Hey, you can't draft. I had to pick something else." Grimer was the result of one of these little mishaps that we had, and we had like a bunch of mishaps, which was really bad. But I ended up picking up Grimer anyhow. I feel like Grimer can hit pretty hard. I mean, you see its HP stat, you see its hack stat. It's pretty vicious, but it doesn't hold itself up very well with its defense or special defense. So I feel like it can get itself hit pretty hard. It's not nearly as good as a Alolan Grimer, unfortunately, because that dark poison type is fantastic to have. We are just pure poison, but if we wanted to absolutely use this Grimer for something like Poison Touch or set up Toxic or just be a menace in general, I feel like that's probably something that we could use Grimer for, but up until now, I really have no real idea on how to use this thing. So hopefully, as we go along with the season 1 of the PLL, I'll get a little bit of a better idea of how to use Grimer and fit it into my team. Next up is a Mon that actually has a lot of potential that I didn't really think it would initially, and I actually got a little outside help to be like, hey, you should draft this Mon. But Tyrunt actually was one of our last picks that we ended up getting. I wanted to get Cranidos initially, because I know Cranidos hits pretty hard, and then Cranidos was already taken, so it was another mishap, and I was like, shoot, what do I pick? And then my friend was like, yo, come and draft Tyrunt. Tyrunt is really good. Plus you get that spicy dragon type, which you don't have on your team, and I was like, that's not a bad idea. So I ended up snagging Tyrunt. Tyrunt itself has a lot of potential, because not only can it use Dragon Dance, it can use Outrage as well, and Outrage is super strong in this format. However, you do have to deal with the confusion part afterwards, but either way, I was very happy with this pick. The defense stat is actually really high. You can take a lot of hits, and with a Sturdy plus Berry Juice combo, you can set up some Dragon Dances and just sweep. And that is something that I need to figure out how to do better, because you saw a little bit of that in our second week, me trying to do that, and I failed miserably because I was too scared to send it in, and I just need to figure out a better way to use it. And of course, we can modify all these Mons as we want throughout all of Little Cup, but I'm very excited to see what Tyrunt can do. I was actually really happy with this pick after our week 2 battle. Despite it not going so well for us, I was like, hey, this Tyrunt has a lot of potential, so I got to play with it correctly. So either way, hopefully Tyrunt will put in a lot of work this season of the PLL. Second to last, we have Esper. Now, Esper is not the greatest in Little Cup. I'll say that immediately. It was a tier 4 pick. I needed a tier 4 pick, and I was like, I don't know what to pick. But Esper, I know its evolutions are good in regular Smogon rules and battles and stuff like that, because it's a good fake out setter. It gets Prankster, all this good stuff. So I'll go ahead and snag it. Unfortunately, Esper doesn't get Prankster. It's only its evolutions, I think. If not, then I'm just completely wrong about that. But either way, I was figuring, hey, we can do some jank stuff with Esper. And you guys saw a little bit of that as well in our week 2 battle. It didn't work out so well because I had to set up my own little set for Esper, because I don't know what to really do, because there's really no builds. As if you look down here, strategies, no movesets available, because no one uses Esper in Little Cup. But I do feel like in the future, like its base stats are pretty even and solid, like across the board. We can really use this thing for whatever we wanted, I feel like. And with it getting a lot of like debuff moves and like light screen, barrier, or status elements like Thunder Wave or Toxic and stuff like that, I feel like there's a lot we can do with Esper. I just haven't figured out how to use them yet. So I think Esper will actually come into clutch very late into our season. Once I finally figure out how to use him. But until then, we're going to probably keep Esper on the back burner, kind of figure out how to use him until the time is right. Last but not least is Gulpin. Now, Gulpin was my very, very last pick, and the very last pick in general for the draft league that I got to get. I didn't know what to take. I wanted another tanky kind of defensive Mon, and I figured, hey, Gulpin's pretty tanky. But then now I look at its stats, and I was like, shoot, it's not that tanky. You may have made a mistake here. But Gulpin, I'm not really sure what to do. It's kind of like with the whole Grimer situation. I'm just not really sure what to do with this thing. Because Draft League is so different from regular competitive play, because you have to, like, you can't pick exactly what you want, and you have to then make what you have work with your team that you already got. So, and that's one thing I've really actually enjoyed doing this little league with. Is that whole like dynamic of, it's like, oh, you're not using like the meta or whatever. You have to figure something out and be creative with your sets, and I really do enjoy that. But Gulpin, it does get Sticky Hold and Liquid Ooze and Gluttony. Honestly, I don't think either of those moves or abilities are that great. However, I was thinking that maybe we could run like a stockpile set, maybe, and like Spit Up and all that good stuff to try to just like tank things out. But I don't know. Maybe it's just gonna be another toxic user. I'll have to see if I can figure something out to do with this Gulpin. If not, and Gulpin is just like not great at all. I do get 3 transactions, I think, through the entire season, so I do have that little wiggle room there to kind of pick something else. But if that happens, I will let you guys know. But as of right now, Gulpin is your honorary member of the Salt Lake Sceptiles, so we'll have to figure out a way to like squeeze him into one of our sets. But guys, that is going to be it for our draft analysis video. It was quick, it was dirty. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, we'll be able to go ahead and do a lot better throughout the rest of the season. We ended up winning our week 1. Spoilers, we ended up losing our week 2, so we're currently 1-1. I'm about to do my 3rd battle today, I do believe. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.